on EIHA TV. You'll have seen over the last few weeks we've had a lot of input from our education programme, particularly with Euan King, our technical director for netminding, and we've been running online courses, which we hope to have run in person this summer, but we've moved things online, and we're delighted to be joined. We have Euan on the line with us, our technical director for netminding. Hi, Euan.
Hey, Craig, you all right?
Good, yes, thank you. We're also very delighted to have with us a gentleman who's been with us over here last summer, delivering a course in person, but is fronting up several of our online webinars, and that's Jim Corsi. Hi, Jim, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Craig. Thank you for the invitation.
No, my pleasure's all ours, for sure. Obviously, it's about middle of March, I think, when things kind of started shutting down over here, and similar over there in North America. How are you getting by in a kind of a no hockey world when hockey is your business?
Well, one of the things that we've been able to do in our organization is we've been doing a lot of stuff on video, and so much of my work has been developing goalies, developing a system where we're able to use video and face-to-face coaching. So a lot of the much of the stuff we've done right now is I've given our kids some homework, some work to be doing off ice, more specific goalie fast foot work. As an organization, all the kids have the ability to get to all their games, shots on goal. So I've encouraged them to take a look at their game and look at it in a way that it's an opportunity to reflect and see how they can improve. If there are any questions, they can reach out. But the idea is that it's not that heavy. But my other job is also scouting goaltenders around the world, and so I have to do a lot of work there, and that kind of stopped because there aren't any games being played.
Yeah.
So it was quite abrupt, and everyone's feeling the pain from it. No sport whatsoever, let alone ice hockey. But thankfully, we're all in good shape. Our organization as a whole is still all good. We're all homebound, locked down, but we do what we can do. And really, one of the fun things has been Euan King's invitation to participate in the online education for goaltenders and mentorship for goalies. So I've really enjoyed it. I think it's a valuable way, especially because it's taped. It's a valuable way for coaches and young kids to look at it, review, and pepper me with questions after.
Yeah, we'll bring Euan in. Obviously, we had yourself with the education program. We had Jim in Cardiff delivering a seminar in person last year. Obviously, we wanted to do a follow up on that this year, but when things changed in kind of mid-March, we had to adapt, and that's where the online webinars came in, Euan.
Yeah, so the plan was that Jim and Steve McCarthy, who's the assistant coach of Cleveland Monsters, we're both going to come over in August to basically do a seminar for us covering players and goalies. Obviously, the pandemic has sort of stopped that, and believe it or not, Jim sort of called me one day out of the blue and said, like, if you need me to do anything, give me a shout. At that point, it sort of gave me an idea. I think we started off with one webinar, and then it developed into two, and then developed into three. As Jim's probably come to find out now, when we have conversations, it usually starts as one and ends up being three or four, because we throw ideas and we start bouncing around, and before we know it, it's 2 days in Cardiff rather than 1 day in Cardiff, and instead of 2 classrooms, it's 4 classrooms. Instead of 1 on ice, it's 3 on ice, and before you know it, Jim's in and out the country in 3 days and off to Spain. Probably doesn't remember anything from the 2 days, 3 days.
That's quite a rush. It was let alone the fact that you were saying there were 4 presentations and 3 on ice. It was well organized. I think that's the most valuable thing when these clinics are proposed. I mean, professionally, you know, I've done a whole bunch of things, and you've seen a number of things, and we all go through all that. But you as a professional, you tend to lend yourself more often or more readily when the organization and the planning is spot on. I mean, it's not possible to do everything perfectly, and at the same time, it's a matter of the effort that the people put in. And believe me, to have put that together in such a short, you know, it was 2 days, I think, right? 2.5 days. It was 2 days.
Yeah, it was two full days.
It was quite, yeah. Anyway, for me, that's worthwhile. I have always felt that it's valuable to share my experiences, and if it's helpful or worthwhile or of interest, that's even more important. So, like you had said, you know, hey, you know, if you want something to do on this webinar, maybe I can help out. Let me know. I had just done one with the NHL Coach Association, and that was a lot of fun as well. So,
yeah,
you know, that's one of the things that we do, right? I mean, if I've had this experience and I'm able to share it, and people are willing to listen.
Yeah, no, we've seen the success of the webinars this year. That we've put them online and they've been fully booked in a matter of minutes sometimes. So we started off and we had to put more places on, and then that's when it went into, we've done a series of 3, and they booked out in a matter of hours, and it was the thirst is definitely there. And me as what I would say a lay person, I'm not a hockey. I haven't really played at any level, but I've watched for the kind of 15 years or so. But what I found couldn't understand was the most technically difficult position on the ice was probably one of the last to have specialist targeted coaching and development.
Well, I don't know about that, Craig. I think it's the last to have been understood. I don't know how it is in Europe, but I over the years, I think it's really quite common in Europe to have more specific training. Anywhere you go to a tennis court, you can't play unless you've had some lessons, or if you go, you can't just walk on into a sports club and not have taken lessons. And
yeah.
In group sports or new sports, I think it's a little more difficult. You start off as a toddler and you move on. But as far as goaltending goes, here it's evolved to a point where, I started 25 years ago. So let's just say about 30 years ago in the NHL, goalie coach, what was that? Most kids came up and they were self-taught. You go 10 years later, and more teams have a goalie coach at the pro level, at the collegiate level, and I think what happened in that 10 years span, it accelerated the level of goaltenders right off the hop, and I don't know that the other positions have had that at that time. But today, if you were to fast forward like 20 years later, or even 15 years later, almost every team has a defense development coach, a forwards development coach, and a goaltender development coach, and pretty well. And subsequently, the positions have received more attention. But I would have to say that goaltending was the leader in the understanding that their abilities have been taught. As I think you might have heard me say in the webinar, right now goaltending is a system. You have a goalie system. There are certain plays, certain situations certain skills that you can use to your advantage in specific moments. As a forward, now we are understanding it. You have a guy who's teaching stick handling. You have a guy who's teaching skating, power skating. That was one of the few features that was out there. But it was, I think, more goaltending that had the early teachings of how to work a skill. Now, is it as well understood as it should be? Not always, but that's like everything, right? It's like everything, and I think that's one of the things that Euan is trying to, and the EIHA, right? The English Ice Hockey Association is trying to do. They're trying to create a system where it's not just about coaching goalies. It's about coaching coaches, so that when it's time to coach goalies, there's a commonality. There's a template on what you should base your teachings. And once you have that template, well, as a coach, you evolve and I don't teach the same way I taught 5 years ago. So that's what I like about the webinars, is that there's an exchange and you pick up something new and you move on from there and you grow.
Yeah. And you can come in on that. Obviously, you've obviously played and now going into the coaching and development side of things. You've noticed the same sort of changes as Jim has, possibly way here in the UK, or possibly a little bit behind kind of North America and Europe perhaps, but we are getting there.
Yeah, we are getting there slowly. It's gonna take time. I think I said when we sort of put the plan in place a couple of years ago that you're not going to see the fruits of this for another 10, 15 years. It's not a quick fix. We've got to educate the coaches now to educate at the grassroots level. But you're not going to suddenly turn a 16-year-old or a 17 or 18-year-old goalie into an NHL goalie. It's just not going to happen. It's targeted at the lower level for now. The grassroots, coaching the coaches to be able to coach their goalies as they come through. The GK1 sort of covers a lot of the basics, the fundamentals, which is probably the most key point at that younger age. GK2 it was meant to launch this summer, was obviously been delayed due to the pandemic. But that goes more into the tactical side of stuff as well as the technical, because it's such a big part of the game now. You can't just be a goalie, as Jim says. You have to be a player as well. And there's one thing which it's funny. Jim said something last year which has sort of stuck with me for quite a long time now. He said, all I know is I don't know. And by that, the way I read that is that the game changes so quickly and so often that by the time you think you're comfortable with something, it's changed. The game's changed. So we have to adapt and adjust every time we do. Like, scoring goes down and they go, oh, it's the goalies. We'll make their kit smaller. But actually, last time they did that, what happened? The goalies got better because they got quicker. So goalies adjust. So the GK1 that we delivered last year is actually slightly different to the GK1 this year because things have adapted slightly and they've had to go through and make changes.
Yeah. And I think that's something I was reading, was it last year's goalies, I think you've said it yourself as well, goalies are players too. So you've got to have, goalies have to have the same coaching as everybody else, but then they have their own goalie specific stuff as well. So goalies used to get left out of normal coaching. Used to just go down one end and shoot pucks, and now they have to be brought into the whole thing. So I think that was one line that stuck with me as well from last year was goalies are players too.
No, goaltenders aren't just targets. I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of the webinar is that there are coaches who are coming on board that are saying, well, the most effective difference in a team is better goaltending. As I've often said, how valuable is a goaltender? Well, 60% of your team. And I often say, well, actually, bad goaltending is 100% of your team. Try and win with a bad goalie. And I think where you really don't always have the opportunity for a goalie coach. And most European countries, most youth hockey, well, for the large part, around the world, other than at the pro level, even then, again, maybe not even at the pro level, you don't have a goalie coach. You might have a part-time guy, might not, or parents have to take care of it. But coaches understand that. And so if you have a coach who's sensitized to that, and they can develop drills that will have their goalie practice skills or practice exposure, and they'll have an opportunity on the ice to practice what maybe they've done on Tuesday last with goalie coach Euan King, for example, at a Tuesday afternoon clinic at 3:00, and then the clinic's over. It's once a month, and then he goes, and that's it. So the continuity is repetition, and that's where it's important. As you just said, Euan, you're not going to make a great goalie overnight. This process takes a lot longer than just simply showing the skills and that. But coaches buying into the fact that the whole of the team needs practice. Guys taking 100 shots, the guys are practicing their shots. But if the shots aren't from effective places where the goalie has a chance to practice a specific skill, all the goalie's done is taking shots. And then you end up practicing maybe a bad skill. And then game starts, and now what? So the continuity of coaching, the consistency of coaching, and the whole team being part of the development coaching, it's going to come together. And that's where I think the greatest effect of these Euan's clinics or the NHL Coach Association clinics, where coaches are exposed to other ideas of how to manage ice. Really, if you consider that you go to game and you've managed your ice so that all the players have an opportunity to improve, that's great. Like I've often said this, every time a kid steps on the ice, it's an opportunity to get better. And if you don't use that ice to get better, well, what is it, 250 pounds an hour? What is it? For ice? Yeah. That's a lot of money for just standing around and just getting pelted with pucks. And now what have you got?
Mm-hmm.
Pelted goalie.
Just to go on from that point that Jim just made there, like one thing I think that surprised quite a few people last year at the clinic in Cardiff was when the goalies first stepped on the ice. Obviously, we invited 20 odd goalies to come and be the on ice demo goalies for the drills, and everyone got on the ice, and the first thing they did was stretch, and they got introduced to Jim Corsi, the disciplinarian at that point, and he made a very good point in the sense that every minute you're on the ice is valuable. So why are you wasting it stretching? Use it to work on your edge work, your skating, your save skills. Do your stretching, you warm off the ice. You only have an hour. Don't waste any of that time. And I think it surprised a few people, and I think it may have put a few people on the back foot, but it made a lot of sense.
Well, the reality is, of course, is at the NHL level, the guys, at the pro level, I think you saw that when you were our guest this year in training camp. The guys are, they're there 2 hours before practice. They get hydrated. They do some stretching. They do some workouts. It's a dynamic preparation. They go through a whole series of things. And then when they go on the ice, they take a bit of a twirl. They start moving around. They get a little comfortable. And you have an hour of ice. If you want 2 hours of ice, you just, do what you want to do. But the effectiveness of really stretching, that's all done in the dressing room. What the kids see, of course, is they see a routine that says, oh, they stepped on the ice and they're stretching. Well, you get on the ice, move fast and get going. Standing around going, anyway, I can't stretch anymore. That's as far as I go. I was putting up a deck yesterday. That's one thing else I did, by the way. Okay, anyway.
No, that's fine. No, good. So I think something we've mentioned a couple of times. So the seminars we've done the last couple of years, two aims, that looking at the goalies but also the coaches. So from your side, Jim, and from you and from the education program, those two things running in parallel. You want to make the goalies better kind of now, but you want to improve the coaches to make goalies better in the future.
Yeah, that's the ideal aim. It's not quite as easy as that, because we need the coaches first. It's sort of the chicken and egg scenario, right? So you could, in theory, create like an elite program of, say, picking top 3 kids at each age group and putting them in with certain coaches and say, right, okay, you are our next 3. But then what about everybody else? And there's also plenty of children and kids and even adults that slip through the net or develop later on. Like, kids develop at different times. Someone who's fantastic at 10 might go through puberty and struggle for 2 or 3 years. And then on that elite program sort of thing, they're lost, potentially. So that's not the ideal way to go. If we can develop more coaches to help develop these kids, I think that'll have a better impact in the long run. At the moment, we sort of create once-in-a-generation goalies. We have the likes of Bouncy. Before that, Stephen Murphy, Joe Watkins, Stevie Lyle. But it was sort of like once-in-a-generation. We want to start being able to get enough kids through coaching and good coaching, by these webinars, by the coaching qualifications we're putting on, and trying to educate the coaches. So actually we end up having not just one, but we have sort of 3, 4, 5 battling out for national team. At the end of the day, we're a Pool A nation now, so the expectations are probably slightly higher now than they've ever been. And as Jim said earlier, like, goaltending is so key. We need more options moving forward.
Yeah, Jim, do you see that thing the same in, obviously, the challenges we're having here in the UK? It's something you've possibly already gone through?
Well, we're still going through that. I mean, even now, I mean, if you consider the top goaltenders in the NHL, the top Canadian goalies in the NHL are not Canadian. I mean, the top Canadians are Carey Price, Fleury. What is Carey? 32. Fleury is 33. We're making good goalies. We've got some really good goalies. There's some good talent. There's a couple of kids that are 16 years old that should be good. But as far as what we've done is not enough. I think other countries have understood that the valuable thing, as Euan said, is to coach and give a lot of kids the opportunity to improve, the opportunity to succeed. And when kids see that they're given the time and they're cared for, and they have an opportunity to improve and to play at a higher level, kids are attracted to play that sport or play that position. So when Sidney Crosby is playing like he's playing, and the young kids identify with that, and so everybody wants to be a center. When Patrick Roy was the top goalie on the planet, the Quebecois, the French Canadian kids, were the top goalies at the time. And now Russian goalies are seemingly the top kids. But you can't let that just sort of happen by demographic. You have to encourage the young kids so that in the pool of young kids that there emerges the really good athlete. And I think if Sidney Crosby wanted to be a top baseball player or a top soccer player, probably would have been, because he's a great athlete. There's just no question in my mind about that. So yeah, there are a lot of good goalies, but to get to the next level, you have to find those kids that are better advantaged physically. They might be taller, faster thinkers. I don't know. I'll leave that to the psychologists and the sports psychologists. But overall, you need to catch all the kids. As Euan said, if at 10 years old you already pegged them as the best in their group, and you leave the other 10-year-olds on the side, goodness, at 12, 13, when puberty cuts in and the other kids have been left by the wayside, those are 2 or 3 years that have been lost in their development. So you really need a bit of both. You need a broad approach, and I think that's where the thinking in these webinars and these clinics that Euan is arranging and the English Ice Hockey is arranging, that allows coaches the opportunity to teach, know what to teach, know more about what should be taught, so that if they get a goalie coach, they'll have an idea of what's going on, and then the result is that kids feel like I'm going to practice and I want to come back because I'm having fun. Especially as a goaltender, you got to remember, getting rocks thrown at you, it ain't natural. It just isn't natural. Here I'm going to throw a rock at you. Most people will go like this. Instead, you're telling them to go, no, drop to your knees. And front the puck. You go, that's not natural. So, yeah, you want to encourage the kids, but the kids get discouraged if the coaching, if the overall game, the overall practice. What am I doing here? I could be doing something else. And that's, I think, the primary importance of giving coaches the opportunity, because most of the coaches are coaching. They're well-meaning and they really care. And so give them the tools so that they're able to cobble together a good practice that allows them to help and reach out to all these kids. Goodness, I went to help my son build a deck yesterday. If I don't have a hammer or a saw, how am I going to help?
Yeah.
Not that I knew what I was doing anyway, but that's another thing.
Another thing, yeah. You and the response to the webinars, obviously for us it's a new way of delivering content for the education program. How's the response been?
It's been probably bigger than I was expecting. I think with Jim's ones, we got them out to nearly 250 people. The ones we did for the kids, I think we had 200 come through them. The John Hamre one that's coming on Tuesday, that went in an hour and a half. I had a 2-hour meeting with John last night running through his presentations, so that's going to be pretty good coming. It's a new way of working, right? So I guess a bit like going back to what we said earlier about like all I know is I don't know. This is a new world. We've had to change and adapt the way that we're having to deliver content and education.
Yeah.
It's completely different because you can't see your audience. You can't judge how everyone is taking the information, or if you're boring them or anything like that. But I think they've been really successful, and the EIHA obviously led the way at the start with all the ones that they were doing. And my thinking is if you've got people like Jim and the EIHA coaches willing to give up their time to do that, then why can't we?
Yeah. And the John Hamre one is the next one, and there's still things in the pipeline as well. Not necessarily goalie specific. We're trying to cover as many bases as possible.
Yeah, so we've got John Hamre coming Tuesday. I'm working on another one when we can finally get through to each other. The person it's going to be, we're sort of playing voicemail tag a little bit. So once that's sorted, we can get that sorted out. There may be another potential player one coming. We just need to tie somebody down there as well. I think Alex Green's going to be running some on strength and conditioning. So that's due to come. We don't know how long it will be till we're allowed to run classroom courses and stuff like that. So you can either sit on your hands and go, well, we could just, we'll pick it up when it happens, or you can use the time now. Like, you have more time on your hands now than you've probably ever had before. So it's the perfect time to learn and develop. Like, there's so much stuff out there now. So if we can help the coaches, that by the time we can kick back off, whether that be September, October, January, whenever, no one's going to be a little bit rusty. They can sort of hit the ground running, because we all know when the rink's open, not just the kids, but the senior teams too, everyone's going to be desperate to get back on the ice. So coaches, we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah. And Jim, obviously, the similar situation is a case of being prepared if and when you get back to the rinks, get back into action. You're just kind of primed and ready to go. So when you do get the green light, you can come straight back in.
Oh yeah, I mean as I said earlier, it stopped quite abruptly. There's still lots to do. Getting back onto the ice, as I said, the kids are preparing as best they can. They in their basements, and some can go outside and do stuff. The gyms aren't open, although some areas in the States they seem to be opening up. But the one thing is that no matter how hard you train, especially like in a game like hockey, you've got to still do stuff on the ice. That's the real hard part, because the nature of the game, the way you stride, the way you move, it's a slippery surface. You have to use a lot of your legs and your hips and your core, and in an unnatural way that when we step on the ice after having not trained, that's the thing. A lot of the guys we start training camp, everybody's been training. They've been on the ice. So personally, I'm ready to go. I can blow a whistle like anybody. But as far as an athlete goes, we will have to be careful on how we begin hostilities, really, because of the nature of what's gone on now. It's not just we've stopped and trained and prepared while we're waiting for the stoppage. It's not like when we had the players' strike, the NHLPA and the NHL, we had the strike. The league was shut down. Guys were still playing. Guys were still playing in Europe. Guys were still skating. Ice rinks were still open. So the opportunity was still there to maintain your body and in preparation. In this case here, it's starting from scratch, like really scratch. So we'll have to figure out. And I think that you said Euan, there's going to be like a webinar, right, for strength and conditioning. You said someone from England.
Yeah. So our technical director.
That'll be very helpful.
Yeah, he's putting together a program at the moment to run webinars, same as the ones that you did, obviously, that I did and John's doing. So it's going to be that for the kids and the coaches. I think Alex is going to announce that in the coming weeks.
Those are valuable things. That I think there are going to be a series of challenges at the beginning of all this, or when it restarts. If it restarts the way they're thinking about restarting, they have to think that through, because players are valuable parts of your game. Last I checked, and if they can't play, what have you got? And so we're really going to have to be careful how we ease into this. It won't start just like that.
Yeah. Well, it's, like you say, we all adjusting as best we can. Even interviews like this, we would have done them. If you were running the seminars over here, Jim, we would have done this face to face. But now we're having to do this over the magic of the internet.
I'm 3 feet from my screen. I hope you are too, right?
Yeah, totally social distance. Yeah, 100%. Totally safe. But it's been fantastic, and there's probably so much more we could go into. We maybe save that for episode 2 another time. But Jim, Euan, thank you very much for your time. I hope you do both keep safe, keep well, and we'll see you back on the ice before too long, hopefully.
Thank you, and wash your hands.